Welcome to this episode of The Mandate. I'm your host, Byron Henry, and we're glad to be here today. Today we're going to be talking a little local politics, and by local I mean Collin County politics, and in the lead up to the May 28th runoff elections, which are going to be upon us faster than you think. Specifically, the early voting starts Monday, I believe, May the 20th, so it'll be here in no time. We're going to talk a little local politics, as I said, some special issues dealing with Collin County. Our guest today is Plano City Councilman Shelby Williams. He is also a candidate for the chair of the Republican Party of Collin County. So we're very happy to have him to discuss issues facing the party and his candidacy and what it means for Collin County going forward in 2024. But first, I'm going to get on my soapbox here for just a minute, and those who know me and have talked to me at length about politics know that one of my things that I really care about is party unity. And party unity is easy from March to November, especially in a presidential election year, when you have the dichotomy of President Trump versus President Biden, the rematch from 2020, the fate of the country, and what conservative Republicans hold dear, literally on the ballot, with Ted Cruz on the ballot against Colin Allred and those kind of things. It's easy to be unified in a presidential election year when the stakes are so high. But what happens in the other 70% of the election cycle when you're not in an even-numbered year for an election and you have a party that still has to manage itself, that still has to raise money, that still has to be effective in nonpartisan races, city council races, school board races? What happens during that period of time? And I think Republicans have fallen into a bad habit, especially in red areas, of eating their own for 18 months and then coming together to try to elect Donald Trump. And it's not that easy. Managing or herding cats that is the Republican Party is not automatically, you check a box, I'm conservative, I have conservative bona fides, and I can all of a sudden I have the skill set to manage a party, to deal with different personalities, to deal with different elected officials at all levels of government, from federal, state, county, and municipal, as well as school boards, that I can listen to everyone, that I can make sure everyone feels heard, even if I don't agree with them, that I can allow people to feel heard and be a part of a party that is a big tent party, that has libertarians in it, that has moderates in it, that has people that do not agree with us with respect to every jot and tittle of the Republican Party platform and other issues that conservatives care about. So this idea that because you're either the most conservative candidate or you have the most conservative following, or maybe you have spent more time in the grassroots or whatever the shtick is, or the line, that all of a sudden makes you qualified to manage a body is ludicrous. And I'm here to tell you that voters should test people's experience. They should test their qualifications. They should test not just their commitment to specific issues, but their commitment to the party, because that's what body managers, whether it's a majority leader or a speaker or the lieutenant governor or the Republican Party chair, Matt Rinaldi, or the Collin County chair, currently Carl Voitsberger, formerly Abraham George, and John Myers, and now we have a runoff on May 28th to see who the new chair is going to be. The skill set for those positions do not equate to this person agrees with me politically on everything, therefore they must be the right person to do the job. So enough of my soapbox. I just want voters to be aware and clear, Republican voters, that we are not just looking with someone that agrees with us. We're looking for someone that can manage a party in off years when voters are not engaged, raise money when voters and donors are not engaged, and keep everyone on the same page for more than just March to November. Because that's the easy part of the job when Republicans come together to elect all the Republicans. It's the other 70% of the calendar that where good managers, good administrators, good leaders with good experience and a good skill set, it's where they excel. And that's what we should be looking for in our party leaders, our lieutenant governors, our state party chairs, and even our local party chairs like the Collin County chair, which deals with so many of the structural basis. You know, they say, the old saying, all politics is local. Well, it starts at the bottom, and if we're going to be a grassroots bottom-up party, then you don't get any more bottom-up than the precinct chairs for the Republican Party and the county chair for the Republican Party. And that's why this runoff election is so important. And as I've always said here on the mandate, my job is not to do talking points or doom scroll all the bad things that the left is doing. It's to present information and allow you to critically think about issues and come to your own decisions. I have my own opinions. I will share them freely. You may or may not agree with me. And by the way, if you do agree with me, it doesn't mean I think I'm qualified to run the state party or the county party. I'm not running for that and don't have any interest in that. But it does mean that I care about the party just like you do, and I want to make sure I make the best decisions for the party and our movement. So turning to local politics, I am so pleased to have Shelby Williams, my friend and city councilman from Plano. He joins us today to talk a little about local politics, his experience on the Plano City Council, the runoff that's coming up on May 28th, as well as what he sees are some of the challenges and issues facing the Republican Party in general, as well as the local party, and how he intends to address those issues. So please welcome Shelby Williams.
Thank you so much, Byron. It's great to be here.
It's great to have you, Shelby. So you are an elected city councilman, two-term elected city councilman, and from what most people looking at the voting records would say is at best, in the best years, deep purple and probably a blue city in Collin County, the largest city in Collin County, but also a blue city. Is that right?
Well, I wouldn't say we're a blue city yet, Plano. We are pretty solid purple, but it's the goal of folks like me to make sure that that doesn't go any bluer. When I first ran for Plano City Council in 2019, I was very clear about my conservative values. I didn't try to hide them under the moniker of a nonpartisan election. I made it well known I was a conservative Republican, and if that's what you want in a city council member, then please vote for me. And by the grace of God and the people of Plano, they did.
So you were able to send that message out, not run a stealth campaign like I'm a Republican, but you don't know where I am on things. You were a proud conservative, and not only did you persuade voters in a blue city, or a purple city to vote for you, but they voted after seeing your performance voting for you and seeing your performance for 3 years. They voted for you again.
That's correct. They did. In fact, I was reelected last year to my second and final term. We have term limits in Plano. I had both my staunchest supporters from my first election backing me and some of my most critical detractors from my first election backing me.
So it sounds like you have a history, at least from your description, of bringing people in.
That's correct.
And not pushing people out.
That's correct.
On that line, you've put out some information about a plan with respect to the party. I think the days keep ticking down because we get closer to November. But tell me a little bit about your plan, because I got to tell you, having been involved in Republican politics in Collin County for going on 24 years now, it seems like we're still red, but we've got a lot of internal problems that need addressing, and some managing and some leadership that we really need in the local party. So tell me, what would you do to address some of the division that's some individuals are causing, but also what these runoffs cause between elected officials, and as you know, with the Paxton impeachment and everything that basically divided, had all these incumbents both lose, some win, some lose, but a lot of challengers. So it's caused some deep cuts and divisions in the party. What do you think you can do, if anything, to help heal those wounds and get us ready for November?
Well, first, you hit the nail on the head when you said that we're eating our own, and we've been doing so increasingly for the past several years. Now, I want to set the stage here and say that I have a plan and a goal to bring the party together. It is not going to be easy, so I don't want to oversell that as a simple task. But we have a multi-layered dynamic in Collin County. First, we are the largest remaining red county in Texas. 254 counties. We're the sixth largest county in Texas. We're the largest remaining red county. It is consequential how the Republican Party fares in Collin County. We have over 1 million people, and we're one of the fastest growing counties in the entire country. So second, we are ground zero for the Ken Paxton impeachment. So Jeff Leach and Ken Paxton, both right here in Collin County. That has caused people with relationships with both of them to get into high furor, and that has stirred the angst within the Cullen County Republican Party. That's going to be a hard thing to heal, and it is going to take time. So my plan, you alluded to the number of days. First, it was my 315-day plan because it started with the March 5th primary election. Well, we're in a runoff. So that's changed to my 231-day plan. But it's not, you may count, the number of days between the runoff election and the November election. It's the number of days between the runoff election and the start of the next Texas legislative session in January. Reason for that is one of the ways in which I think the Republican Party writ large has been missing the boat is that, and somebody told me this, a lot of people told me this when I first filed to run for county chair, the job of the chair is fundraising and winning elections. So I think that's an important part, but I disagree. I think the overarching job of the county chair is to advance the Republican Party. Well, as you pointed out earlier, those months between March and November, they're easy, but then everybody leaves the field come November. That's when we need to start. That's when the people we just elected to do a job are going to start doing it, and we go away. No, we have to work with them. We have to help them and hold their feet to the fire. It starts when they actually start advancing legislation. That's when we really need to get engaged, but we don't.
And the issue of those months, other than that, the sexy March to November, the presidential election year, the Senator Ted Cruz on the ballot, obviously, big issues for conservative Republicans, especially those in Collin County. Ted Cruz was just here in Collin County having a fundraiser. We'll probably see him again multiple times because of the importance of Collin County. But also, that's the time when everybody's talking politics, everybody's talking elections. It's fun and everybody's doing it, and they don't go back to their daily lives until after the election. So I think it is important that we stay engaged as a party, especially the actual party apparatus, precinct chairs and county chair, with the legislators and leaders after the election.
That's right. Advancing legislation, engaging the community, building relationships, all of the off-season stuff.
So that's one of the issues. I think I talked to the candidate for HD 65, Mitch Little, was a prior guest of mine, and he talked about what's next, and he talks a lot on the campaign trail as well as in our interview about the legislative priorities that the state party goes to a lot of trouble to curate and put out there in the primary, and that the voters actually vote on. These are polls. These are actual Republican voters have voted for these priorities, and the idea that one of the issues that is rubbing a lot of the grassroots activists and party activists raw is that they don't advance the legislative priorities of the party in a Republican-dominated House. And so we need somebody who's going to pick up that baton and carry it from every county, including Collin County. So it sounds to me like legislative priorities, as voted on by the voters, take center stage in a Shelby Williams run party.
Well, that's absolutely right. If we're not actually advancing the conservative legislation that we elect folks for, then what are we even doing playing at this? That's why we elect them. So we need to enable them as best we can to move that ball down the field. Now, the legislative priorities are critical. We had this election polling the Republican voters for their legislative priorities. That's going to feed into the Republican Party of Texas Legislative Priorities Committee, which I've had the privilege of being part of twice, to provide those priorities and codify them with all the delegates at convention, which we're going to have next week, to determine what is of highest priority to the Republican Party. And something you nailed, and I get this question all the time. So we've got these legislative priorities. We've got a Republican majority in the state legislature. Why can't we get all these passed? Well, it's because while we have a Republican majority, we don't have a conservative majority. They're not the same thing. So part of what we have to do in the off season is advance conservative values, engender community engagement to bring the conservatives out of the woodwork and actually get them engaged to elect the people who are not just Republicans but also conservatives, but do so in a constructive manner. And we've got to recognize, and the legislature is a perfect picture of this, the Reagan principle. The person who agrees with you 80% of the time is a friend and an ally, not a 20% traitor. We've lost that while we eat our own. We have to recognize that with 8 billion people on the planet, you can't accomplish anything meaningful without working with some of them, and they're not all going to agree with you.
Well, I think the Reagan thing you mentioned about President Reagan's principle is right. And I think debate here, debate in the public sphere, debate in the legislature, in the county party is wonderful. I think people ideas should clash, and people can clash over ideas constructively, especially within the party. That's all healthy. But it seems like there's been a little bit of a difference, kind of like an exit ramp. And I'm not sure if it's Republicans starting to take a page out of the progressive left's playbook, but there's been kind of an off-ramp where we've gone from a clash of ideas and trying to persuade people to come over to our side to kind of a politics of the way to win elections is personal destruction, and not just to put all the ideas on the playing field and put all the ideas on the playing field and let's see which ones come out on top, and then let's all get behind the ones that gain the majority of the support. And I just want to, what's your view on holding conservatives' feet to the fire, calling out votes and behavior that conservatives can't abide, but also making sure we remember that these are allies in the sense that every R counts as a majority and allows us to choose the speaker, whether it's at the federal level or the state level. You have to have a majority to have the speaker, and you have to have a majority to have the committees, and you have to have the majority to advance any agenda. So what do you think about, how do you balance the idea of winning elections and fighting for your candidate or your values and not letting it devolve into politics of personal destruction, what I would consider a divisive way that it's very difficult to heal from?
Excellent question. So the first is to recognize that when you burn a bridge, you ain't getting anything from the other side of that bridge. Just nothing. So you and I may disagree on a lot. I don't think we do, but if we did, if I treat you with respect and dignity, and I'm respectful but firm about my position, I may never convince you to my way of thinking. But if I come at you with insults and denigration, then I'm guaranteed never to convince you. That's a burnt bridge. So people tend to take it very personally when you insult them and you launch personal attacks against them. Avoiding that is the first step. We can have spirited debate about policy without launching into personal attacks. And we used to, within the Collin County Republican Party, I was a precinct chair for 3 years. And when I tell the newer precinct chairs, because party's kind of off the rails now, the executive committee meetings are a disaster. They're chaotic. We even had a physical altercation at the last one. About 1/3 of the executive committee has resigned, saying, I've had enough of this. A lot of the precinct chairs are newer. They've come on since 2020. The events of 2020 made them want to get involved. That's fantastic. I think in some ways they were left rudderless. They came into a situation in which there were already factions battling with one another, and they just kind of got sucked into one side or another, and there are more than two sides. When I tell these newer precinct chairs that things didn't used to be like this, we had productive and congenial executive committee meetings, even though we had passionate debate about some of the measures that were brought forth, they're kind of amazed. They're like, what? What happened? And so I've watched the de-evolution of what's gone on in the county party, and I don't want to disparage the current or prior chairs because hindsight's 2020. So I understand how to reverse all of that, but again, it's way easier said than done, and I can't do it all by myself.
Well, speaking of the politics of personal destruction or insult or whatnot, there's rumors going around. I think the elephant in the room is basically that somehow someone has filed a criminal complaint about you, and it somehow started a, quote, criminal investigation of you over some allegations that were made by some supporters of your opponent, and that's being publicized to others. It's not an issue about policy. It's not a debate about your position on the runoffs or the Ken Paxton impeachment or the Speaker of the House. It's not a debate about your position or the party's positions on Convention of the States or IVF or any of the issues currently facing the party. It's an issue personal to you. So I'm going to basically give you the floor and let you address this allegation that you're under some sort of criminal investigation.
Sure. And as you point out, I mean, my opponent's backers are waging lawfare against me. So as you've heard, I'm under criminal investigation. So here's how that works. My opponent's backers filed a frivolous complaint with the Secretary of State's office. The Secretary of State when they have a criminal allegation of this nature, they can't do anything about it. So right there on the website. So they have to kick it over to the Office of the Attorney General to investigate. And voila, you have an instant criminal investigation. Just add political opponent. So I've already been questioned by the investigating sergeant with the Attorney General's office, and he said very plainly, there's nothing here. There's no violation of the law. I'm going to recommend this be closed. However, it's got to go up through his chain, go for attorney review in the OAG's office. That's kind of redundant. And then it goes over to the Collin County District Attorney, which is where such things belong to begin with. But by bouncing around amongst multiple agencies, they can keep this alive and go around claiming I'm under criminal investigation until it's all closed out, probably after the election. So I'm encouraging folks to reject these kind of smear tactics, and the Republican Party is better than this. That's why I'm asking for your vote, is to try to heal this stuff.
Well, and I don't know all the details. I'm pretty familiar with the legal process, being a lawyer and having been the general counsel for the party through 5 chairs now and for almost 10 years. But I will say that the Secretary of State doesn't do anything with respect to criminal they don't investigate criminal complaints, and generally that's handled by the DA in the county in which the offense allegedly occurred. So I guess to the extent that there's a complaint been filed, anyone can file a complaint, right? I mean, one of your supporters could go out and file a complaint, and it would get the same treatment.
That's right.
As this one. So I know you're not advocating that.
Yeah, we don't operate that way.
Yeah, that's right. And it's that using the criminal law to criminalize politics has been used throughout history, my lifetime for sure, against Republicans, whether you go all the way back to Tom DeLay, to Rick Perry, to Ken Paxton, to former Senator Ted Stevens, who lost his seat in the Senate and cost us a majority in the Senate because he was indicted. Later, it was thrown out as frivolous. An appeals court threw it out and cleared, but not till after he had lost his seat. So the left has always used this type of election interference, politics of personal destruction. Let's criminalize this and put a cloud over the opponent because we can't win at the ballot box.
Right.
And I just want to know your position on that. And I think it's happening today against President Trump exponentially. He's actually being tried during the campaign. Luckily, that's not the case here. But I want you to tell the viewers what your position is on how to treat your opponent with respect to campaigning, how difficult, how tough you're going to be, and whether or not you agree or disagree with that type of tactic.
Yeah, I am a staunch believer in the rule of law. Every year during Constitution Week, I do a Free to the Public Constitution 101 seminar. It's easy to abuse the rule of law, and that's what's being done here. So I don't have a problem. You talk about holding legislators' feet to the fire. I have no problem with calling out genuine issues as long as they are 100% truthful. Things like that need to see the light of day. Manufacturing things like this, waging lawfare like this with with a frivolous complaint. Even the Texas Ethics Commission, more than a decade ago, issued a unanimous resolution condemning such tactics because, as you said, anybody can file a complaint. Every complaint that's filed, the agency is duty-bound to investigate. They have to. They have to look into it. So anybody can do that just so they can run out claiming that their political opponents are under criminal investigation. And when it's taken further to indictments and especially political convictions, it's an egregious abuse of our justice system. So I think that campaigns, they don't necessarily need to be all sunshine and rainbows, because there are legitimate issues that people have with some candidates and elected officials, and they should be called out as long as they are 100% truthful. The truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. But when this kind of stuff is fabricated and innuendo and insinuations are thrown around, I find that incredibly distasteful. And I know we've seen it from the left for a very long time. It's really disheartening to see it from the Republican Party. And one of the things I intend to do is elevate us above that. We will shine full light. So you talk about the details of this lawfare. It's all on my website, shelbyhwilliams.com. It's right on my blog. You can see all the details yourself, thrown wide open. We should be able to shine a light on that kind of thing. And people should be able to see it for themselves. I try to make it easy for people to understand these things for themselves without scratching their heads wondering, well, who's telling the truth? And that's how we need to operate as Republicans.
And you're not just coming out with this stance conveniently, because it's being used against you and currently Donald Trump, you've stated that you're opposed, of course, to the left's vilification and lawfare against Donald Trump. But also, when Ken Paxton was impeached last Memorial Day, going back almost a year now, there was a rally on the steps of the Collin County Courthouse. I was there. Our former chair, Abraham George, was there. And there were a lot of politicians and local leaders that were scarce. They were absent. They were on vacation. They were out of town. They had family plans, and they didn't show up. But I was there, and I remember specifically that you were there.
I was there.
And you were speaking out. And so tell the viewers the position you took back then, before you were running for county chair, before someone had made allegations against you criminally, the position you took on this very thing.
You're absolutely right. So I was there on the steps of the courthouse, speaking to everybody, news crews and all. And so I hadn't said anything publicly. I listened to the entire impeachment. And I was unwilling to say anything publicly until I had listened to and watched the entire committee hearing that gave rise to the articles of impeachment. Once I had done, I wanted all the information that the legislators who cast that impeachment vote had. So once I'd listened to that, I went down to the county courthouse and I said that the rule of law is paramount. So yes, I had this position long before I was ever subject to any of this. The rule of law is paramount. And whatever the allegations were, the process that led to the impeachment of Ken Paxton was, in the committee hearing, I thought it was largely scripted. It was a show. And it was an abuse of what is a very serious process. And I always rejected the idea, well, they had to impeach just so the Senate could have a trial. If that were the standard, then we'd all be impeached all the time, just so you could have a criminal investigation. So, yeah, I've always had this position that the rule of law is paramount, the process is kind of sacred, and the abuse of that is egregious.
So, and I remember that as well, that rally for Attorney General Paxton, and thank goodness that chapter is closed, and that was also a schism that was dividing the party here in Collin County, and hopefully those wounds will begin to heal over time, and we can get back to the business of winning elections and advancing the conservative cause here. I want to talk to you about something else, because I think there may be some differences between you and your opponent, and I just want to make sure that that they're clear to the viewers. But there's been some debate. I was the SD8 convention chair, as you remember, and there was some issues that came up with respect to the plank, with respect to one of the specific ones I remember that was kind of contentious was how do we elect the county chair? And so the viewers know right now all the voters in Collin County that voted in the Republican primary, they can vote in the runoff, but everybody that's Republican can vote in the Republican primary, and they get to vote on the county chair. There's some proposals being batted around about whether or not it should only be elected by the executive committee. Should it only be elected at the state convention? Should the chair only be elected at the convention by the delegates as opposed to the voters? What's your position on that, Shelby?
I believe that the county chair should be elected by the voters. So yes, you're right. My opponent took the opposite position during the SD8 convention, that the first proposal was that the county chair be elected by the executive committee, the little club. And they should get to choose the county chair. They do that for interim elections, but for the elected role, I believe it should be open to the voters. That's how our representative republic works. It should be open to the voters. The compromise that was struck that she supported was that the county chair should be elected by delegates to the Senate District Convention. I still believe the county chair should be elected by the voters. So I think it's a little ironic that she's asking for votes in an election that she doesn't want people to be allowed to vote on.
So the position of the SDA, which is basically the Collin County delegates to the convention, is that the county chair be selected at the convention by the delegates. Your position is that we should keep it as it is, with the voters voting for county chair. And your opponent thinks that the voters that she's courting now for votes should not be allowed to vote for the county chair.
Correct.
And what about the issue of closing primaries? There was a forum yesterday for the 5 candidates for the state party chair. forum, and they all spoke on this issue of closing the primaries. Without getting into the weeds about how you would do it, like legislatively or by party rule, what's your position on whether or not primaries should be open or closed?
I understand the arguments on both sides. I'm generally in favor of closed primaries. I think that they help secure the party itself as an institution. The open primaries, we hear a lot of complaints about crossover voting. I don't think that happens a lot, except in specific circumstances. You can go and look and see the amount of crossover voting to try to pollute one party's votes or another. This happened in 2008 with Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton. With Rush Limbaugh's Operation Chaos, encouraging Republicans to go vote in the Democrat primaries. So I think closed primaries do help secure party integrity. It does create a little bit of a barrier for voters to vote in a primary based on their registration, et cetera. But the parties stand for something, and I think that's important to preserve. I will say, and maybe no candidate for a party chair has ever said this before, I am a lifelong Republican. The Republican Party was founded in 1854 to advance liberty. It was an anti-slavery party. And that's something I want to elevate back to the top of the Republican Party. Let's keep our eyes on that overarching purpose, is to advance liberty. But I'll say, I don't like our two-party system. I don't know a way out of it. I think we're in a deadlock where the first party that blinks and splits into two hands the other a monopoly on government. So I don't have a way out of it. But George Washington warned of the tribalism inherent in parties in his farewell address. And we're seeing that. We're seeing that within the Republican Party as we, in a red county, as we splinter and start to eat our own. Deprived of the red versus blue tribalism, we're creating our own tribalism. That's what humans do, and we've got to rise above that. So without a way out of the two-party system, I'm going to advance and advocate for the Republican Party and the Republican ideals, especially advancing liberty all around, for as long as I'm alive and as long as I draw breath.
So since the abortion issue was given back to the states in the Dobbs opinion by the Supreme Court, there's been a lot of things in different states happening. Texas has pretty much cleaned up the issue. For the most part, we've got a law banning abortion, except in specific instances, and the number of abortions, elective abortions, have dropped precipitously. But one of the new frontiers that I've talked to with some candidates and some other Republicans and conservatives is another issue that came up at the SD convention, and that is IVF, the in vitro fertilization, correct. And the IVF issue has come up, and it's beginning to bubble its way up to the top to a life issue in the Republican Party. So tell me a little bit about, as we wrap up today, what you think about that issue and how the Republican Party should address it.
Sure. So in short, the controversy around IVF is that potential, I won't even say viable, but eggs are fertilized artificially, and there could be more than one that are fertilized and then never implanted or never survive. And so I understand the concern about that from a pro-life perspective, and I am pro-life. And so I had to do a little research on this. And this was a topic at the SD convention for the Republican Party of Texas platform. And I am in support of IVF, not banning IVF. The reason is that, and I know people personally who never would have been able to bring forth new life without IVF. And we are given a commandment, one of the very first commandments ever given before the 10, be fruitful and multiply. This is the only way many people can do that. So while I understand the counter arguments about potentially fertilized eggs not making it, that happens all the time. Miscarriages, stillbirths. My own mother had several stillbirths before I was born. I was a little bit of a miracle. They happen all the time naturally. But our overarching commandment to be fruitful and multiply holds. It was never withdrawn. It was never recanted. And IVF is one of the only ways that many people can achieve that. So I do not support banning it.
Well, I wish you luck in your campaign. I hope that your comments today to the viewers give them more insight into what the party does and what the party needs. Is there anything else you'd like to say before we wrap up, and also tell the viewers where they can find you?
Well, thank you. First, it's easy to find me on my website, shelbyhwilliams.com. That's shelbyhwilliams.com. All my contact information is publicly accessible. I'm not president. I have no reason not to be accessible. I have a very extensive blog where I've written about all sorts of stuff. You can find all of my views there. I'm not shy about any of this. And we have this runoff election coming up. Election day is Tuesday, May 28th. Early voting is just Monday, May 20th through Friday, May 24th, only 5 days. We have a lot of healing to do in the Republican Party. Right now, the wounds are widening. Things are getting worse. We had a physical altercation at the last executive committee meeting. We desperately need healing. I have the experience, I have the knowledge, I have the relationships at all levels of government, state, county, local, federal, to facilitate elevating the Collin County Republican Party to be stronger than we've ever been. So we don't need to be the last remaining red county or the largest remaining red county in Texas teetering to purple. We need to bolster the strength of the Collin County Republican Party and set an example for the rest of Texas. So I ask for your support and I ask for your vote in the May 28th runoff election for Collin County Republican Party chair.
Thank you, Shelby, so much for joining us today. And I could just say that it is very important that Republicans get out and vote in this runoff. There are a lot of high-profile races in HD 61 and HD 33. There's a lot. There's a State Board of Education race, which affects Collin County as well as other House District races across the state, which are going to determine just how conservative the next legislature is and whether or not our priorities will actually be advanced or not in the next legislative session in 2025. So we look forward to seeing you on the next episode. Thank you for joining us. This is Byron Henry for The Mandate, and we're adjourned.